Good morning. I see some familiar faces in the building, so what's up? And for all of y'all that don't know me, like you said, my name is Will Roten, also known as DJ Sober. And today well, first off, I want to thank Doug, Grant, and Savannah for having me and reaching out to me and my manager and setting this up. So very honored to be down here in the neighborhood speaking. I wanted to kind of just go through my creative journey and how I got here, because yeah, as he mentioned, Herby's, I own a restaurant or a business, but I think most of the people here, other restaurant owners, business owners, are also creatives. So I want to talk about my creative journey and kind of who I am and what makes me me. So I think it all starts for me with art. In the beginning, from even elementary school, I was always drawing on things, doodling. I remember in kindergarten, my teacher pulling me aside and talking about how my drawings were more advanced than the other kids in the class, which was huge to hear, and kind of something that pushed me, because my parents they supported me, but I don't think they ever really understood the art side of things. My dad was a super cowboy, and they were like, oh, that's great, fine, but they never really honed in on it or whatever. So hearing that was something that pushed me. Also, I think maybe a year later, one of my teachers said that my penmanship looked like a typewriter, so that was something that, I always felt visually driven and noticed things as a kid. Even I remember driving across town with my family to my grandparents and noticing signs and typography before I knew what that even meant, that stood out to me, that still to this day are things that held up, or that I'm like, wow, like I remember that from being a kid, and it's something that I still love, or that the design aspect of it is so great. So that's something that sparked everything. And I think in elementary schools, when I started skateboarding, I had two older cousins, and one of them was a badass. He skated vert, he was in a punk rock band, everything I wanted to be. I looked up to this guy, and that was something, skateboarding is something that changed my life for sure. His mom, my aunt, got me a subscription to Thrasher, and just opening the pages of that for the first time and seeing like skateboard graphics, seeing, they had reviews of music, bands, your favorite band wearing other band shirts. It's before the internet, so you had to do the research yourself. But seeing all that firsthand and just immersing myself in it full force, and I would emulate all those things. I would draw my favorite skate graphics or like Stussy logos or whatever, and just try to recreate that on my own. So that was a big influence in my art. And then I think music just follows suit. I was, because of my cousins and just the school I went to, like, I think I pulled from everything. Like a lot of the kids I skated with listened to, new wave stuff like New Order and Depeche Mode and stuff like that. My cousin that was in a punk rock band turned me on to punk rock stuff. His older brother was into college rock and introduced me to the Smiths and a bunch of other bands like that. So everyone at my school listened to hip hop. So I was absorbing it from everywhere I could, recording stuff off the radio. And I really, really got into music, at that point in time. And I think maybe 8th grade, I went to a house party and I saw someone DJing in real time. I'd only seen it on MTV or music videos, or, a hip hop group having a DJ in the background. And I watched this dude the whole night. I was just glued to him. At the end of the night, I was the annoying kid that had all the questions. I wanted to help him carry his gear to the car. So, I wanted to feel these like tangible things that to me before were just like, out of reach. So I asked him all these questions, talked to him. He's the guy who ended up teaching me how to mix at his parents' house when I was 16. And so that was just something, after I saw it, I knew I needed to do it. Like, I want to do this. Never thought I would do it for anyone else or a crowd. It was just for my own personal, like, I want to learn how to DJ and do this craft. So I saved up and bought turntables. I was already making flyers for a local bar club at 16. a friend from school's older brother, he was like, oh, my older brother's into all the stuff you're into. So he started taking me around to places I shouldn't have been in, met the people there like, oh, you can draw. They saw my sketchbook. You want to do flyers? So I was doing flyers for this club at 16, and that really like opened a lot of doors for me. I bought turntables from the club owner. It changed hands, so he had 2 sets. So I bought turntables from him, locked myself in my room, and just like made that my number one goal, is to learn how to do this and do it right. So did that for, quite a while before I ever called myself a DJ. It was just something that, like I said, for my own personal, for myself, that I wanted to do. And then I remember the first time I agreed to DJ a party, it was a house party, the guys throwing it called me up and they said, what's your DJ name? And I was like, what? What do you mean? And they're like, well, we're at Kinko's, we're making the flyer. This is before text or email or whatever. So like I had to tell them right then and there. And I didn't have a DJ name. I just played in my bedroom at my parents' house. So I was already going to a lot of warehouse parties, illegal raves, whatever. So some guys one time were making a joke and said that my nickname should be Sober because I didn't do anything. So yes, it's literal. And so I was like, oh, I like that or whatever. And it kind of caught on. So people were already calling me Sober, and people were calling my house, my parents' house, and be like, is Sober there? And my parents were like, what's going on? So I was like, well, let's go with Sober. And so that was the first flyer that I was on. They made the flyer, that was that. And then it stuck. And I think at that point in time, I wanted it to mean something. So I just stayed on the Sober path. And then me being a 16-year-old, hanging out with a lot of older derelicts, I was exposed to a lot of things that were messed up and like put in a lot of situations that I shouldn't have been in. So it really was eye-opening for me to be like, you know what, I think I'm gonna stay away from these things that everyone else is dabbling in and focus on music, and that's what I did, and bought records, and that was another thing. People would come over, I was like, at that point, probably 17, I had all these records, like, how do you have all this? And I don't spend my money on, drugs or alcohol or whatever. But I never took the name to be preachy or anything. It wasn't about like, oh, this is bad. I did it it worked for me, and that's kind of how that happened. I think from that point, I just did it for myself, like house parties here and there. It wasn't until later that I actually DJ'd for bigger crowds or took it seriously. Fast forward, work-wise, I ran into someone at a skate park that I knew, and they worked for Red Bull, and the Red Bull promotion team was there hanging out, passing out Red Bulls. They all looked cool. I asked them about the job, and at that time they were taking things like, they laid everyone off, and there was a new company that was like handling all their marketing, and they were kind of revamping. And he's like, hey, we're gonna be rehiring, like just hit me up. And I was so persistent, and he told me one time, he's like, no one's ever been so persistent about getting a job. But I really wanted to do that. I thought it was cool because I felt like Red Bull was present in all of the, all the areas of things that I was into. So I ended up landing the job with Red Bull just on the promotion team, driving around the car with the big can. And I did that for a couple years. And then I was thinking about moving and relocating, and he was like, man, you should apply for this manager position. And I had no experience in that. I didn't have a marketing degree, and I communicated all of that. He said, doesn't matter, you're good at what you do. So I applied for it and ended up falling into that and scoring a marketing job with Red Bull, which everyone else that had that position had marketing background. And so that taught me a lot. And that kind of, all of that will make sense into, what I've done after that. But, just absorbing everything that I could in that job, in that position. I worked there for a couple of years, but I was very unhappy there. I felt like I was being overworked, and also just coming up with a lot of ideas that would go up the chain, and I felt like I wasn't getting credit for them. So the people in the culture positions would ask everyone else that knew what what was happening for ideas, and my ideas would get used and no one even knew where they came from or where the root of that was, where it was from. So it was frustrating for me. I was very unhappy. I tried to set up a meeting with the director of marketing, and he rescheduled our meeting 5 times. So I felt like I wasn't being taken seriously and that I was being blown off, and it was even more frustrating. So I decided I was gonna leave Red Bull, and I had a couple of friends DJing and doing some really interesting stuff. One of them had moved to Puerto Rico for years and then New York, and was back in DFW doing some really fun stuff, like multi-genre things. And I was like, man, I really like what these dudes are doing, and I've always DJ'd, so I think I'm gonna quit Red Bull and try to do this full time, just give it a go. So I went to the director of marketing's office. We finally sat down, had a meeting, and he's like, oh, Will, what's on your mind? Like, what are you thinking? Blah, blah, blah. So I tell him that I'm putting in my 2 weeks, and he starts backtracking. Whoa, 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 like what's going on? What can we do to make you happy? And offering all these things. You need more money? And I was like, well, that's what I did want. I wanted to like go into a field that I felt like I would be more beneficial. I wanted to go into culture marketing. I wanted to move to Santa Monica, to those offices, do that. Well, that's something we can talk about, you know? And at that point I was done. I'd already checked out, and I'd made my mind up that I wanted to do something for myself and not for someone else and give them all these ideas. So he kept backtracking, and he said, well, you know that Red Bull's mold of marketing, you know, we're looked at by all these other companies, and someone right now is writing a book about Red Bull, and you know, you can be a part of that. And I just looked at him and I said, you know what, Greg, I think that maybe someday someone will write a book about me. And he just stopped, and he stood up, and he shook my hand. He was like, I have nothing else to say. I respect that statement so much. And I stayed on a lot longer than 2 weeks to help find a replacement, because I wanted to keep that relationship with them. And I'm glad I did, but that guy, Greg, was a huge supporter of mine after that. And Red Bull supported events and things I did moving forward, but he was always a big cheerleader of mine moving forward. And I think that that meant a lot, because I think that statement that I said to him just resonated. He was also very corporate, but he was into music and everything, so we connected on that level. But that was a huge step for me moving forward. I took everything that I learned at Red Bull and I put it into play when joining forces with those 2 friends I mentioned. And I mean, everything I learned. We made a promo team. We had like team building stuff with our team. Everything marketing I learned from Red Bull, I put it into DJing. And that, at that point, we were like a little machine. That was like 2006 to 2009. And we turned my friend's like kitchen into an office and just did DIY everything, flyers, the whole thing. One guy would handle one thing, and you know, I was better at this. And, you know, I was better at like talking to sponsors and getting money, and this guy was better at hitting the streets and rallying the promo team. So that was something, that was like a really fun time, and I think a very important time for my DJ career, and kind of what paved the future. We had an all ages party at that point at the Loft at Southside, and we would have like 500 kids, and I mean like 17 and up. But there was, my friend that DJ'd was like, all these cool kids have nowhere to go. And when it turned time for them to be 21, I was already at Beauty Bar or whatever, then they were coming to my stuff, and it was like, we were their introduction to DJing, and we gave them something cool to do. We're booking DJs from other places and other acts and everything. And so when it came time for them to be able to actually go out and drink and whatever, party, they already, like, we had rapport with them, so it was cool. And that was another chapter, Beauty Bar. I was there for 8 years, every Thursday, and I learned a lot from that too, just trying new things. And it was something, in the beginning, it was brand new. No one was there, and so it took a little while. But after a certain point, you knew at midnight you wouldn't even be able to get in. So that's kind of the DJ journey. Let me see where else. So I guess around the time of DJing with those two other guys, I was living in some lofts right across from Double Wide, and I hated it. And a buddy of mine lived over here, and he was like, you should try Oak Cliff. And I didn't really know much. I'm from Fort Worth originally, and had spent a lot of time in Dallas as a teen and everything, but just, riding out here with friends, going to parties or whatever. And so I started exploring the neighborhood, looking around and checking things out. I really liked the lay of the land, the houses, everything like that. Found my house, which I didn't even think I was gonna buy a house. I just was like, well, I really like this neighborhood. It reminds me of where I grew up in Fort Worth. It feels like home. So I just went for it. I got a loan. I didn't ask my parents for any help. I got my house here in Elmwood, on Elmwood, in 2007, which at the time I didn't know what I was doing, and I thought I made a huge mistake because I was living check to check and couldn't, I was like, have I made the biggest mistake of my life? And now it's like the best decision I made in my life of buying a house at that point in time. But then it was difficult, but I loved it. I remember going to other parts of Dallas and passing out flyers and doing promo stuff. And then as soon as I would exit Illinois and pass Wynwood, I felt like I was back home. Like, from dropping off stuff at there used to be some sneaker shop, Attic, and Uptown and stuff, and I wasn't feeling it over there. And like I said, it just felt like I could breathe when I got back over to Oak Cliff. So from the jump, I felt at home here, and it's somewhere that I'm happy to be. I would also walk my dog Herby all over the neighborhood, and I remember walking by now what is my restaurant, and for a while it was boarded up. That wasn't anything for, I think it was like a washateria or like a washer dryer store that had been boarded up. So I would walk by, and I remember the Olmo and our facade, just loving that tile work, and like, man, someone should do something here. And I never even thought about trying to do something myself. And so it just something always stuck out to me. I'm like, man, these buildings are too cool just to be here. And obviously a couple people did things there. I think COVID was probably a big factor, and the last one not working out. And then I think I've had this talk with Doug and probably a few other people. I think you can also do things too soon sometimes in an area, or in anything. An area meaning music. There's people who have created something and never got credit for it because they were just too forward thinking, or people weren't ready for that yet. And I hope that Herby's came at the right time, and I feel the synergy and the energy in the area, and I think that I love where things are going. When I moved here in 2007, I would never see anyone outside walking their dog, running, walking, nothing ever. And now we have all these paved paths, and it's so refreshing to go somewhere else, come back, and there's just so much movement, so many people doing things outside. I love to see it. And I feel like, unlike other areas in Dallas, or maybe other cities or neighborhoods, nothing in Elmwood has seemed forced to me, or like people are being driven out. I feel like it's all been very genuine and organic. I feel like maybe some older people have died off, some younger couples have bought houses. Kids that grew up in the neighborhood are now old enough to go to events at Olmo and come to Herby's and stuff like that. So to me, it feels very natural, and I love seeing it. I love where things are at right now. I love that you guys are here. I love everything that's happening over here. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of give you all a little snapshot to how I was introduced into the neighborhood. And then as far as Herby's starting, originally I was interested in opening a bar in the neighborhood. It's something I've wanted to do for years and years. I feel like because of my experience in the industry. There's other people who have asked me to consult, and I've given so many ideas. Back to the beauty bar thing, I did the math one time on Thursdays alone. You know, over those 8 years, I made them millions of dollars, and those aren't my dollars. So I always felt like, well, if I could do this for other people, why couldn't I do it for myself? And I should do it for myself eventually. So I was looking at a couple of spaces in downtown Elmwood to maybe do like a little hi-fi bar situation, and nothing really, like I liked some of the spaces, but there was no patio area in either spot I was looking at, and that's huge for me, because at Beauty Bar, back to that, there's a huge back patio, a front patio. A lot of people met their, you know, significant other, their husband, wife, band member, or band members there, and you know, that's such an important thing for people to be able to talk and meet and fellowship, because not everybody wants to be inside a loud spot where you can't hear someone. So patio was a deal breaker for me. At the time I was talking to Elijah, who owned Peaberry, and he was really gunning for me to put a bar there in the area. And I was like, yeah, I don't think this is gonna work out. And he mentioned the smash burger concept. He's like, well, I don't think this smash burger thing's gonna work out either. And I was like, oh, what's that about? And he told me a little more, and he mentioned Jake, who's our chef. But Jake had already done pop-ups for me at a bunch of my parties that I was doing at Tiny Victories. I had a party for several years called Paradise. And so I already was familiar with Rev's grilled cheese and just him as a person, and I really liked that he was gonna be involved. And so instantly that perked my attention, because I wanted to do something. I knew I wanted to like get involved in something else. And I was like, well, this isn't a bar, but it's a good way to get my feet wet and learn, and I've learned quite a bit so far, learning every day. But so I just kind of jumped in full force without asking too many questions, which is probably a big mistake question-wise. But now it is just Jake and I, and yeah, we're cruising along. We're figuring out things as we go every day, every week. But I think, you know, there were some hiccups in the beginning, and all that's starting to be behind us, and that feels really good. And I feel, although I'm excited for what's to come in Elmwood, I know there's a lot of city planning stuff that's gonna make it better as far as parking and trees and walkways and things like that I'm excited for, because I think it'll help. And I think when more businesses come to the area, that it'll give people more of a reason to like spend an afternoon in Elmwood and like hop in the car like, hey, we're gonna go over here. You know, I don't want it to be Bishop Arts, because I think it's a neighborhood, and I think it's gonna stay smaller, and I like that, like a smaller scale thing. But I think it's special, and I think that there will be more things that will drive people here, and I'm excited for that. I had another thought, and I just got derailed there, but I'm excited now that it's not so hot. I think that we've already seen a change there. Like, people are out doing stuff. We're bringing a lot of events back. You know, we're trying to fill up the calendar with that, collaborate with friends, do things, you know, that are interesting. And I think that's one thing when I started this, like, I never thought about opening a restaurant, but I did want to open something. And I knew creative-wise that I had an eye for that, and I could create something special. And even though, you know, we're not as busy as I would like us to be every day, I also am taken back by how many people come there on a weekly basis, you know? So like, if we have a really good day, it's like, wow, we had 100 and something orders today, people that just came to this little burger spot in my neighborhood, and that feels special. And I think the best feeling is walking in and seeing all the booths filled up and people having a good time with their friends and family and creating new memories, because that's something that's huge for me. I think, there's not a week that goes by that people don't talk about Beauty Bar and what that meant for them and the memories that were created. And I think it's cool to know that like my blood, sweat, and tears went into a space that's actually mine, that people are creating those memories and they'll remember that for a long time. So that's the biggest thing for me. And I think that Elmwood is a food desert, like we don't have much but fast food and then like a few taquerias, which are great, but most of them you just walk up and order. You can't really sit down. And I think creating a space where people can actually hang out, listen to music, bring their laptop, do work, we can host events. I feel like we're providing something for the neighborhood that we were lacking. So that's another thing that is important and special to me. But yeah, I think that kind of covers most of the things that I have noted here. I'm sure I'm leaving out plenty, but I would love to open up to some Q&A if anybody has questions for me, comments. Yeah, so the original Beauty Bar in Dallas was on Knox Henderson, right across from Barcadia and Whippersnapper. It was like on that corner. It's now nothing, it's flattened, but it was a very small spot. It was a franchise spot. There was there still is one in New York, and I think San Francisco's closed, but it kind of looked like an old 50s salon inside as far as the decor.
Is it a salon or is it?
It wasn't. It was a bar, but people would be confused. There was like chairs with like the old school dryers and stuff that were in there. Yeah, very, very 50s and very old school. But people were like, whoa, is this a salon? But it was just, that was the branding for it. But it was a cool spot. I played a few times in Austin before they opened one here. But I think in Dallas, it was just, there was nothing else like it. It was very welcoming to anyone. And anyone that I'd booked from other cities would say the magic words to me, like it felt like a house party. There's low ceilings with like this old mid-century like chandelier, and it just felt like you were in someone's living room, literally.
In the 2000s, it was where everyone in Dallas went to dance. Like it was like if you were hanging out and somebody was like, I want to go dance, you went to Beauty Bar.
Yeah, so it was a special time. Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. Love to hear your story.
Thanks.
I have kind of a two-part question.
Yeah, no worries.
One's small and one's big. The first one, you talk about all the people in your life who've influenced you, your aunt, this DJ, the marketing guy at Red Bull. So my first question is, what are you actively doing to influence younger people that come up to you? And then the second question is broader in the sense of, all the things that you've done, the marketing stuff, the restaurant, the music. When someone talks about you and your legacy, what do you want them to say the most about?
That's a good question. I think for the first part of the question, as far as influencing younger kids, like I said before, I never chose the sober path to be preachy, but I think over time I've noticed and people have reached out that said that they, were struggling with addiction and chose to, cut that out of their life. They found me through my name and were like, oh, I noticed that this was your DJ name. Are you actually sober? I've had a lot of conversations with people that just were Googling and found me, or that are local and found me. And I thought that was really special, although like that's not my I'm not like a advocate for that. It's just, like I said, what worked for me. I thought that was really cool. I also, think a lot of people that DJ now in the Dallas scene learned what DJing was from coming to Beauty Bar. There's so many people like, yo man, like I would come and study what you did and you influenced me to DJ. I've been at so many shows where somebody came up like, man, you don't know me, my name is so-and-so, I DJ now, but you're the first DJ I saw and you're the reason I DJ. And that statement alone is so huge for me because it's such a big part of my life, and it's a craft that like I knew I wanted to master, and to know that the time and effort I put into it stood out to somebody, to influence them to pick that up, is really big. I've also, you know, put a lot of people on gigs. Like maybe there's things that I am too busy to do, or that I'm just like, this doesn't fit what I do genre-wise or whatever. I always reach out to a lot of younger DJs that are getting started, connect them with these companies or other entities to get them paid, and to like pass the buck and like give them a gig, you know? And I've, you know, mentored a few people as far as DJing and teaching them the ropes and the basics and everything as far as that goes. And, you know, outside of that, I mean, I don't know, influence-wise, I hope that people just pick up on some of the things I do and realize I'm just a regular dude doing something that I love, and that they can do that as well. During COVID, during lockdown, I couldn't DJ for 14 months, and this is what I've done for a living since 2006, and I didn't know what I was gonna do, so I knew I had to think fast and pivot and do something to be able to survive. So I started a lawn care company, and I branded it, and I mowed lawns in the area for people, and I knew that like I didn't have to have contact with people. I could listen to music and I could do my thing. And I did it for one, to make money to survive, but I also did it to show people that like I'm not too good to do something else, and that like you can do anything. So I wanted people to know like, well, I can't do this right now, but maybe they've been wanting to make jewelry or do this or stationery, like now's the time to do that. And that actually worked. I was in Austin, and this dude came up to me, he's like, man, the lawn care thing was genius. It made me want to start this business, and I did. And that meant the most to me, more than like anything else that whole, you know, that brought me. Just to know that like that thought that I had of like empowering somebody, or just showing somebody that like you can do anything, just do it, just do it. That was really cool. As far as like being remembered, I mean, ultimately, I just want to be remembered as someone who was passionate about what I do. You know, I want like when people see Herby's, or when they see a flyer I made, or they hear a set that I do, that they know that my heart was put into that. When they see it or hear it or feel it, you know, I want whatever I do to be genuine, and for that thing to be the best that I can put out or produce. You know, like I have always been a firm believer that when I DJ, that doesn't matter if there's 3 people or 300 people, I'm gonna do what I'm there for. So at Beauty Bar, I'm gonna use that as an example again, I would get there so early, there would be a few people there. A lot of DJs I know would just put a playlist on, or a mix that they pre-recorded, and talk to people or whatever, and that's fine. But for me, I would try new things. I would play music at that time. You don't have a dance floor, you don't have to make people dance. You can play more experimental things, weird things that people thought they would never hear in a bar. And that, to me, a warm-up set is a DJ's best tool, because they can really show who they are. And during that time, so many people were like, man, I Shazammed so much music during that first hour. Or there would be another way I look at it is, you never know who those 3 people are. There could be somebody else that owns a restaurant, and they're like, man, the stuff you were playing that first hour, it would be perfect for my sushi restaurant. Like, I want you to come play. So you just never can underestimate who's in the crowd or who's listening to you. So like, I always want to perform or produce like all eyes are on me, you know? So I hope that answered.
That's great. That's awesome. Guys, we got time for maybe 2 more questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, man, thank y'all.
From a distance, as a celebrity, you know, like
not.
I know, and you hate that, I think, but I've just known all of your creativity, all the stuff that you've done, and everything that you do is gold. You know, like you get that Midas touch thing. So thank you for your time. Today, I think my main takeaway, part of the legacy that you've left with me is like, again, kind of like points of connection, road to road, different things that you've done. I'm
Right.
like, he's a cool dude. But today, I'm like, bro, you're human. Like, when you see people, you have such a cool vision for the neighborhood and for what you leave for people and memories that are like that's valuable. I
Thanks.
appreciate
You
that.
make me emotional.
It's because you're from Fort Worth, probably. You know, it's
Funky town.
listen, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. What part of Fort Worth are you from?
From the east side.
Okay.
Yeah.
That-
Meadowbrook.
It's the east side is the best side.
Yeah.
So one question that I have for you is, you just, in all of the things that you've done, I never hear you say like, I don't know if I can do it. There's never a sense of questioning yourself or a fear that it won't work out. You just kind of send it, you know? What is that process for you? Have you gotten to a place where you're like, I don't know, or?
100%. Yeah. I mean, today is one of those moments. Like I didn't really know what I was going to talk about. I started thinking about it yesterday. Like, I mean, I met with these guys and they kind of told me what it was about and I just started spitballing. They're like, oh my God, everything you said is perfect. So I really took that to heart and was like, you know what? I think if I overthink it and plan something, I'm gonna mess it up. So I think I'm better off the cuff. But yeah, I think that happens to me all the time. Like, I'm glad that from the outside looking in, that's how you see it, because I think there's many things that, you know, even with gigs, although DJing for me is a muscle memory, there's so many things I'm like, oh, I hope that they hired the right person, or that I do what needs to be done, or I look at the crowd, I'm like, oh, I don't know, like if this is gonna fly, and I just try to figure it out. I think that's the thing, but I definitely have many moments where I doubt myself, or think I've gotten myself in over my head, or wonder what the hell's wrong with me for opening a restaurant, but you know, I'm glad that I project full send, because you know, like you said, I'm human like everyone else in this room, and you know, I struggle with all of those things on a daily basis.
Yeah. When I say human, I just want you to know, I mean that you like care deeply about people. It's very obvious that you're just not, you don't care about the bottom line as much as you care about raising the ceiling and the floor for everybody around you. I think that's
Thanks, man.
super rad.
I love that. Thank you.
All right,
One
last
more?
question. Anyone else? No one? Awesome. Okay, well, let's give it a round.
Thank y'all so much. Seriously, you guys made this easy. Like I felt all the like stress when I got here and anxiety like went away, just because like after the first few things I said, I was like, oh, there's so many like homies and sweet faces in here.